How to buy houses with little to no money. Nobody's giving their house away for free. This is how to buy houses with little to no money of your own. Okay, we want to minimize the amount of money that we have to put out to buy a house so that we can keep it for the next house. Another little piece. When I do my real estate deals, I like to see return on investment. So the least amount of money you can get into a deal, the more your ROI is at the end. I would be real happy to make a $20,000 return on my investment if I put $2 into it.
You just used a big word that a lot of the folks in here may not have heard before.
Which one's that?
ROI.
ROI. I'm sorry if I didn't. It is a little word. It's a 3-letter word. It's a short word, but it means return on investment. And if you don't know what that is, I'll give you a quick definition. But that means it's the return, the amount, the percentage of whatever I made for what I put in. You pay interest. You buy something for $100,000 or for $100. They want 10% interest. It's going to be $100 and $10, 10% back to whoever you borrowed the money from. So that's a 10% interest to the person that's doing it. Flip that around, and if I give somebody $100 and they give me $110, then my return on my investment was $10, which is 10%. So I would be happy giving somebody $100 and getting $110 back all day long. That's better than the stock market. It would be a whole lot better if it was 20, but if I'm beating the stock market, I'm generally happy. Now, if I'm putting $200,000, $300,000 in the deal's a little sketchier, then my 10% is not really what I'm looking for. So it all kinds of depends on the deal, but you want to strive for the biggest return on your investment that you can. Okay, so how to buy money with little to no of your own money. Let's go to the next slide. What is creative financing? Traditionally financing a house is finding a house, making an offer. You go to the bank says, okay, let me see what kind of money you're making. Can you pay back a loan? Blah-de-da. You give them all your W-2s, and then they ask for more paperwork, and then you give it to them, and then they ask for more, and 30 days later, they've approved you for whatever loan is. If the house is worth it, they go through a whole litany of checks and balances, make sure the house is worth it and that you can pay it. But that's kind of a traditional method of buying a house. Any one of your realtors in the room, that's how they're doing 99% of the work that they're doing as realtors in the community. So what do we mean when we say creative financing? Wikipedia has this up as a definition, and in my mind, it's just something that's not traditional. You can literally negotiate anything you want to buy a house from somebody. You can negotiate anything you want to buy a car from somebody. So if you wanted to, you could say, hey, I've got this car. I'll trade you my car for your house. That's a creative way to buy a house. So there are many different ways to be creative when buying a house. It's generally used by investors to minimize their outlay of cash to increase their return on investment. Building cash flow, long-term equity. I sat down and kind of did a little bit of, I didn't come up with all this on my own, but the internet's a great place. But I started thinking, what are all the creative ways I could think of? This is what I came up with. Now, one of the things that I did see is you need to think about also is the ones on the left are cash deals. This is a way to get cash. The ones on the right are terms deals. The difference between a cash deal and a term deal is what happens to the seller on their end. A cash deal, the seller is going to get cash. You're going to give them, you see the signs all day long from investors like us, hey, buy your house for cash. Well, these are the creative ways to give cash to your seller. You get a private lender. Anybody, we've already had private lenders in the room. You've got hard money lenders that'll give you money. You've got partners. We got a partner deal we can talk about here this evening. Somebody's self-directed IRA, home equity line of credit, hard money loans. Those are all ways that you can just go out there and get cash from somebody. Say, give me $200,000 so I can give it to this guy. One thing that comes with with some of these cash deals is your promise to pay it back, which is called a recourse loan. In other words, if for some reason the house falls down, you made a bad deal, the house is not quite worth what you think it is, you're still on the hook for that whatever you borrowed from this person, however you borrowed it. So that's one of the things that you can get away with if you go with a terms deal. Terms deals generally involve the owner who's selling the house taking an interest in your purchase of the house. He's going to carry some of the note. So you're not going to give him all his cash up front. You're going to tell your seller, hey, I'll buy your house. I'm going to give you a little bit now, and then I'll give you a little bit later. It might be a little bit over time later, or it could be a little bit later in a balloon payment at the end when you flip it and you finally work through your disposition. Next one. Oh, the next one here. Unlimited options, limitless options combination. Creative financing, whatever you can think of creatively. Mix, mash, whatever you want to make this work. Yes, sir.
Are HELOC loans something that you like a last resort kind of thing? Like, are they not good ones to go with? Like,
I don't think so. No. And I'm getting a shake here. I'll let you say something here real quick. But here's what I like about a HELOC. And tell me if I'm wrong. I don't have a HELOC. I've never used one, but I've thought about it many times. And if I had less of a mortgage on my house, I would probably do a HELOC on my house, because my idea would be, okay, I've got a $300,000 house. I'm going to pay my personal residence off, and then I'm going to go get a HELOC for $300,000. And then it sits in the bank. When I'm ready to use it, I go flip a house. I put my $300 back. So whenever my money's not being charged interest until I pull it out and use it, and then I put it back. Am I correct?
That's why HELOCs are good. You only use them when you need them. You only pay on them when you're using them. So you're not using them, you're not paying on them. So
right.
Great.
My situation, if I had thought it through earlier on in my, I would have paid off my personal residence, but the interest rate's so low, so I'm not doing that. And I get the little bit of tax write-off there. But my problem is I've got a little bit of equity here, a little bit of equity here, a little bit of equity here, a little bit of equity here. If I can jam it all in one place, then I can get a HELOC. And I think it's 80%. That would be something to ask the lender, though, somewhere 70 to 80%. Right. And then I've got $300,000. That'd be $210,000 I could go borrow like this. Just okay, No, I think you have to re-up. You have to go. I've never done one, so I'm not the expert, but that's how I think it works.
It's a line of credit. So
exactly.
Whenever you use it, if you're not using it, you don't pay.
Exactly.
It doesn't have to be on your primary residence. I did one.
It can be on any. Yes, exactly. The only reason I say the primary residence is because me and many other investors, their biggest asset is their primary residence, because over time they're buying a house or moving into it, and then they're like, hey, I like that one over there. Let me buy that. I'm gonna move into that. And then so they just kind of keep getting bigger and bigger houses. And your families grow, and then you go, oh, the kids all left to college. Why is my house so big? Yes, ma'am.
No.
You have to have equity. Yeah, that's all. And my only part about paying it off was the more you pay off, the more equity you have, the more you can borrow. Right now, my equity's about here. I can only borrow 70% of that. So, that would work. But what I really want is, so I just keep the cash that I'm working with right now. Right behind you there, first, Chase. Whoso.
You got to be careful with HELOCs because different banks have different And I'll speak specifically about Langley, because years ago when I was taking HELOC from Langley, they have a 7-year period where you have 2 years to advance on it. It's a fixed interest rate. So if you don't use that money within 2 years, then you can't advance on it no more. So what I did right now, I've taken a HELOC on some of my rental properties, just standby money just in case I need it. But I took a 20 years, which is a variable interest rate, which is still better than getting private money or hard money, because the interest rate is whatever the prime interest rate is. So just, make sure you understand how you advance on those HELOCs.
content and stuff. So I want to kind of get this recorded just in case I want to repurpose it for anything. Lately, on some of the creative deals and things I've been buying, I've been putting together like some material for a course, like buying properties with owner financing or creative financing, and selling them with a form of creative financing. So this might be like an aspect of that, just whatever I might talk about, examples from the deal. So there we go. So,
All right, we'll come stand here because this one, again, we're putting this out on Facebook, so you guys can go back and look at it again later, and then just clip that to you there so they can hear you.
Yep, there we go. So, all mic'd up here. Oh, you're good. Sorry, I've got it in your way. So, yeah, you can go to the next slide. First off, does anyone have any questions so far about creative deals that haven't been covered? All right. So, I'll jump in. So, right now, this is one I'm under contract on. Anyone who lives in Hampton, do you know Sam's Barbershop? So, under contract on, I've got my signs there if they've not been taken down by the city yet. But this is one I got the lead through direct mail. So I do some direct mail, postcards, handwritten letters. They look handwritten. Sometimes they are handwritten, actually, if it's a specific property I'm trying to get. So this one, the seller was really stuck on a certain price. He just kept going back to this certain number. And he kept mentioning this number and 2 stories about different people that approached him, but they couldn't pay this price. I'm like, okay, this guy's in love with this price. I thought, well, I don't know what I would do with this. I started out wholesaling. I'm like, I don't know how to wholesale this building. There's probably a way to do it. I just couldn't figure that out. And I was like, does it get converted back to residential? Do you keep it commercial? What's the highest and best use of it? So I thought, well, let me take it this way, because he said, I'll even finance it if I have to. So I kind of paused and said, okay, tell me something about that. And he sort of told me like, oh, well, we bought it with financing years ago. They actually bought it on a land contract from Yoder Dairy. It used to be the Yoder Dairy building many, many years ago. And before that, it was a house. So kind of just an interesting story about it. But he was familiar with it because that's how they had bought it. And he said he'll even finance if he has to. So we talked about that. And I told him, I said, well, if you finance it, I might be able to make this work and at your number that you want. I think I can make that work because it's a funky building in the sense that there's not a lot of parking. The location's great. I chose this photo because it's a little bit of a dark photo when I was there one night, but you got 7-Eleven across the diagonally across. You've got like a brand new Taco Bell. I think there's a pretty new Subway up the road. Good area right on Pembroke if you're familiar with this location. So it's good, but it's a really small lot and there's not a lot of parking. So I was like, well, I could probably find a small business owner tenant that would like this property. So that's why I said, if you finance it, I might be able to make your number work, your asking price work. So at that point, we were just anchored around his asking price. And then it was a conversation of, okay, like around your asking price. So we've got your price. We've established that we're going to do terms. How long will the loan term be? The amount of time it's a loan, the amount of time that he's financing it. And then like, what's the interest going to be? What's the monthly payment going to be? So I'll get into some of that. But when I asked him, how long do you have in mind? In my head, I was quickly like doing like really quick mental math or calculator on my phone. I'm like, okay, I'm still a little uncertain about this, but if I can get good owner financing terms, I can dig my way out of it. Like that's what I like about creative financing. It can be very forgivable, like a very forgiving method. If you buy it right. Of course, don't over leverage on someone else's mortgage and not know comps and not know if you can find a tenant and stuff. But if you're owner financing something, you can still get out of it too. You can still sell it. The seller gets made whole and gets their full amount, and you just sell it early. You don't have to keep it for the full period. So I was thinking like 15-ish years is kind of what I liked on this because I wanted to get my payment real low. So I just asked him, how long did you have in mind? And I said, like 15 years? He said, well, 15 years sounds fine. So I kind of anchored at the 15, and that's what kind of like landed us at the 15. So I want everyone to guess what the best part of this deal is. I've talked about the different terms and everything. What's the best part of the deal?
0%.
There is a down payment. That's a good point. 0% interest. You did? What did you do?
To a friend, I had the duplex, I bought the duplex for 41,000. 3 years later, I sold it to a friend for 70,000, 0% interest on the finance. And then a year later, she paid it off. And I took that money to go rehab something else.
Let's be friends. So, yeah, but why did you do 0% interest?
Because I felt like I was already making, I had rented it for 3 years already and made money. And then I was making 30,000 off of it. And then I was just like, I don't know. Because it was like 5 years.
Mhm.
And I knew I was going to get money consistently over a 5-year period. You know, pay it off for a year.
Yep. And they probably bought it as is. You didn't have to do anything to it.
Let me ask another. Why else did you why? You asked a question. Why did you take 0% interest? Right. I mean, here's.
I think I did it because it was a friend of mine.
Okay.
I
The other
knew
one
that-
is, I think why you did it is because the friend of yours asked. Did he ask, or did you just offer?
Oh, he asked.
Okay. So don't forget the point that I'm making here is ask.
Yeah.
Ask.
Another really good reason to offer seller finance at 0% interest, if you are earning interest, you are paying a lot more in taxes than if you're just selling the property.
It's a very good point.
Buy it and sell it at 0% interest.
It's a great point.
You're marking the property up anyway, instead of adding interest on it, you're still making the money. You know what I'm saying? 'Cause I bought it for 40 months, selling it for 70.
What percentage did he finance?
No amortization tables either.
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
that's right. Chase, so was that part of the conversation? This is zero interest, or was he worried about a monthly payment that he was going to receive? And you kind of figured that out, that, because sometimes they don't even think about interest. Well, I want a monthly payment of such and
Yep.
such. And then
Interest really was not part of the conversation. And it said on the contract, because I had a basic contract, and then there's always room in there to write in, and everyone do their initials. On the contract, it said via installment sale over 180 months. I think that's 180 months, but via installment sale. Basically, no interest. So, and you asked what percentage? I had to put down 5,000. So, the majority, other than $5,000. And he wanted 10 grand down, and it was more than I wanted to put down. So I said, well, how about 5, and I'll cover all your closing costs. So, just a little bit of a give and take on the down payment.
Hey, Chase, did you put any clauses in there that you were the first right of refusal if he wishes to sell the loan?
I did not. He won't sell it though. I don't think.
Right.
And so first of all,
Doesn't matter.
He has,
Yeah.
he has the benefit of an installment sale from a tax standpoint.
Right.
He's only paying on what's received during that year.
Yeah, very good point. Great points about the tax benefits. And
It
Andy,
doesn't really matter if we sell it, right? Because
no,
in terms of the
he likes having the income. He's a retired guy as well. He likes having the predictable check first of every month. Andy, curious, what made you ask that
Okay.
question?
If you have that you first right of refusal, you have essentially control of the loan. So if they want to take it somewhere else, they have to come to you first. Most of the time, if you're going to take a loan like that, whether it has an interest rate or zero, they're not going to get dollar for dollar on it. So if all of a sudden this guy feels pressured, like I'm getting divorced, the wife found out a girlfriend, you name it, whatever, and all of a sudden they need cash, they'll want to take that loan and shop it, and it'll have to be sold at a discount. But if you're the first right of refusal, meaning that you get to, if that loan is resold, you get to buy it first.
You buy your own note.
You can buy your own note back. That's why.
yeah.
Literally, Chase Bank.
You have that clause in there too. And they know that, then they'll come to you and say, oh, well then I need to get out of this fast. What would it take to cash me out and be done in 4 years versus 15? And you can go, well, I don't know, how about 40 cents on the dollar of what's left?
Wow.
So
Wow.
it causes a control shoot for you. You're in control of that.
As the investor, I love all that. As the human, I'm like, those are a few tools I probably won't use.
Well, those are tools that you're ever
Done all the
in
time.
place.
You're doing this guy, if he gets cash strapped and he wants out because he
Yeah,
wants his money all of a
That's a good
sudden,
point.
you're now paying a down payment higher maybe than you would have, but you are now clear.
You're
Yeah,
buying a new,
no.
same way you would buy
So,
a house.
and you're meeting
Yep.
his need because he wants cash instead of payments over time.
So that's why, Jason.
Great points.
Got a question for you.
Yes, sir.
Owner finance, 15 years. Say that the owner of the property dies in 5 years. What happened to the property?
So it would go to his. That's some of the stuff I let the attorneys
It goes to the state.
write up. But yeah,
It goes to his estate.
Mhm.
But what about your interest in the property? Do you have, it doesn't change?
I've got the deed.
You got the deed?
It's new
Okay.
record of the loan. It's just the state.
That's what I was getting at. You got the deed.
Yes,
That's
sir.
the key question.
Yes, sir.
That's the key answer. I should say.
Cool. We can go to the next one. Thanks, Scott. So this is another house. I just closed on this in July. And this is a creative deal through and through because I was actually with a college friend when closing happened because there was a couple issues and closing kept getting pushed back. So once we were finally able to close, I was in Maryland. And it's not easy to find, like, I don't know, at least in Maryland, like you can't just walk into like Kinko's and be like, hey, can you will you notarize this for me? Like that's like the notarization location. But everywhere I went was like, yeah, we notarize. Am I blocking you? I'm sorry.
No, you don't.
We notarize, but only for anything other than a real estate purchase. And that's everywhere. So I was running around Columbia, Maryland. I'm like, can you guys notarize these documents for me? Oh, and I also need you to print them because I'm like staying on my friend's couch tonight. I don't have a printer. I don't always live on couches. I was just visiting him. But so I was like, oh, what do I do? I thought, I'll go to the place I always go when I'm out of answers. So I went to the Catholic church, went to the church office. I said, hey, if I give you guys a donation, could you guys probably have a notary in the office, right? And like, yeah, we do. And the guy's like, yeah, I can do it. No problem.
Chase, by the way, your title company should be on.
I'm old.
Yeah.
That's what I did. Like, you can't find everything. I'll be there for you. Like, literally, I'm losing my mind here. I'm like, what?
And they should have.
Your title company should always on.
Yeah.
That is a service they should use.
Meanwhile, I'm running around. So I figured it out. So anyways, you're exactly right. And I realized that later. Yeah. So this is listed on Facebook Marketplace as a for rent by owner. And the photo's really old. I didn't really know the area, but I could tell by the monthly rent. I was like, oh, that seems low. Like, I don't know. This house, it kind of has a cute look to it. At least I think so. So I was like, okay, let me reach out to them. I just said, the third bullet there, I could pay you about the same monthly payment you're used to without you having to deal with landlord expenses such as taxes, insurance, maintenance, repairs, and tenant problems. And they said, okay, well, let's talk about it. And we actually, when I did the walkthrough, the tenant let us in. So I got to meet the tenant, but he had been there for, I think, a couple years. He was one of those tenants that kind of got locked up in the whole COVID thing, much to his benefit. So he was there for a while, not paying very much, if at all. And they were just like done with it. Like they were so ready to be done. And I think his payment was like $400 something a month. Like if I was him, I would have made sure I was paying on time so I could stay there at a price like that. But so we did this at, I think they were wanting $750 a month because that's what they listed the property as. But then I had to remind them, well, remember, you're not paying taxes, you're not paying insurance on the property, you're not doing any sort of maintenance. So I got them down a little bit to $695 a month is what the payment comes out to. And that's a, I have a bullet here. one thing I mentioned as we went and got lunch after we looked at the property out in the Northern Neck, and we kind of chatted out over lunch. One thing I mentioned is if I want bank terms, I might as well get a bank loan, but you don't want to sell the property that way. Because this was a former, the owner, now the note holder, is a former tax account. And her big thing was I actually have a prepayment penalty. Like I cannot prepay it unless they agree to it. And then I've got a 10% penalty on top of that. But they don't want it paid off early because they don't want to be hit with the taxes. So they had something where they were going to do like a 6% interest or something, 10-year term, but a 20-year amortization or something. And I said, well, I mean, those are kind of bank terms. And that's when I said, if I wanted to do that, I would just go to a bank, but that's not how you want to sell it, is it? And that kind of worked to get them to change that a bit. Because I also didn't want a big balloon payment in 10 years. Like, who knows? Maybe I've got like a bunch of stuff going on, deals that aren't closing or something. And like that month, you know how this stuff goes. It's always the worst timing for something like that. So I never want like a big balloon payment if I can help it. So we landed at a 3% interest, 10-year 10-year term, 10-year amortization term. So fully amortized 3% over 10 years. And it was.
What do you plan to do with it?
So great question. So the first property, the barbershop, that I'll do a triple net lease to a small business owner. If they want to keep it as a barbershop, they can. If they want to turn it into I think a tattoo parlor would be a great idea there. And my dad actually had that idea as what would be a good spot there due to the lack of parking. Because you're right near Buck Row as well. For this one, yeah, right. I couldn't get it to really pencil that well as a rental. So what I'm doing is I'm selling it on a contract for deed with the same term that it cannot be paid off early to my tenant buyer on the agreement for deed. Just because last thing I want is a tenant buyer and their rights to buy it out early in 5 years, but then I'm in the jam and I'm like, I can't, and then it's a whole legal battle. So going to make my agreement with the previous owner look exactly the same as my agreement with the tenant buyer. But that's what I'm going to do. I've got someone looking at it this weekend, actually, on Saturday.
What's your spread on it?
So, like monthly cash
spread.
flow?
Just if you're paying $750, what are you getting from?
Yeah. So my payment's $695. What I'm trying to get on it monthly is $1,500.
There you go.
Yep.
Have you made renovations or that's been planned
Mm-hmm.
as is?
Mm-hmm.
Pay an option payment or straight up?
Down payment.
Buying?
Yep.
Okay.
15,000. 15 down.
So you guys listen to that?
Yeah.
What do you put down on it?
I put down 8,000.
So
10 with
put down
closing.
8, we'll sell it to somebody else who collect 15.
You just double everything.
Well, whatever. Exactly.
If I can get that.
You got enough money for another down payment if you found another deal like this.
Right. Well, that'll fund my barbershop.
Right.
So yeah, and I might have mentioned earlier, I started out wholesaling, and wholesaling is great, but Stu kind of instilled this in me. You get paid once, but when you wholesale, but if you hold it, you can get paid every month and over time, and then the benefits like we were just talking about earlier, HELOCs and borrowing against the property like that, and making that property a source of cash for you when you need it. So it's not a great wholesale fee, but $5,000 is like what or 5,000 to 7,000 is what my little profit, I guess, if you call it, would be for my down payment to when I get someone in it. It's not a great wholesale fee, but it's kind of like a wholesale fee, still smaller, but with the benefit of continued monthly payments coming in.
So did you avoid the 10-year balloon payment, or how are you gonna buy it?
Yeah, so it was a 10-year amortization and a 10-year term, but at a lower interest rate. So,
So what would that person that you can get them to buy, what would they be making? What would they be paying you after 10 years? And
if they choose to pay it off in 10 years, which I already prepped them. It's not like we haven't done paperwork yet, of course, but always want to let people know this stuff early on, so it's not wasting their time, or we're not ready to sign. They're like, wait, I didn't know about this. I don't want to do it. So when I do it, I always do it on a 30-year term, just like a regular conventional note. So are you asking what his balance would be after 10 years?
Well, how much will he have to pay altogether to get this house?
So I put it at I think if it was totally fixed up, it would probably sell for about 200-ish in that area. It's got a nice over half an acre lot. It's a nice sized lot. And I'm sorry, I put a little bit of money into the place. We got the septic pumped and inspected, and we got something fixed on the septic tank. So that was a little bit of money there. But the total purchase price, I think, is like $167, owner financed.
From your buyer.
From my buyer, yep. So then also, there's your other payday. If he chooses to pay it off, whatever that spread is, there's the other payday at the end. If he refinances it or pays it off, I'm getting the difference between my 80 and his 167, without dealing with tenants, toilets, and termites. Another thing I want to put on here, when you're trying to buy something with owner financing, you kind of are really forming a partnership with the seller. So as important rapport is in any deal, building rapport and showing credibility and sharing your story with them is also really helpful, because you have the duty to them to pay them every month, and then they've got the relationship with you where they've deeded you a property for that same kind of agreement. So I look at these as forming a partnership with the seller. And even when I get a tenant buyer in, I did one this week out in a rural area, and I know a couple like the mayor and the clerk of the town. It's a very small town. I was like, okay, let me get you in touch with them. Here's the town's info. Here's a contractor that has a painting and carpet business, because the guy did paint and carpet work, and they're moving there. So I do look at these longer term arrangements as partnerships as well, to a degree.
Also because your seller owns 4 other rental properties.
Yes, very good point, Dad. They own 4 other rental properties.
They will eventually want to get rid of.
Yep. So.
Not yet, but eventually.
Yep.
What did you buy that for? Did you say
80.
80? And you're reselling it for 167?
Mm-hmm.
You put down 5,000 and what, 1,000 in repairs?
I put down 8,000 closing costs, and I think my total cash closed is like 10 and change.
And you're going to charge 15 to the new person,
Mhm.
you get 5, plus you're paying $695, you're going to charge 1,500.
Yep. So up front a little bit, cash flow each month, and then at the back end once it's paid off.
And your loan's at 30-year amortization, and what you're paying on is on 10 years.
Mm-hmm. So after 10 years, it's totally free and clear.
10 years, you're done paying off, but you're still making money.
So you got a 30-year, $1,500 a month, and you're going to pay off in 10.
Mm-hmm.
I had a slide up a minute ago that I kind of glossed over. I had a slide up a few minutes ago that I kind of glossed over. It's called the Real Estate Money Machine. There was a guy in the 80s, he wrote a book. He subsequently got nailed for tax evasion.
Well, we know I pay my taxes.
The whole premise of this book was to
My
create
credit
a real
cards.
estate money machine. You're buying houses and selling them exactly what he just said. You're not fixing a toilet. You're not, you're basically collecting money. And when you're done with that 10 years, you got another 20 years of free money coming in. So one of these days we'll have a discussion on how to create that machine.
So another thing about Chase is he doesn't limit himself to a regional, like in the Hampton Roads zone. This is in Wings, Virginia. Have you ever heard of Wings, Virginia? I never did until he found this house. So, I mean, and then he's bought a couple places in Jarrett, Virginia, which is somewhere else I never heard of.
Me either.
Jarrett. Yeah. So, I mean, you might think you might need to stay close by, but if you be creative and look in other areas that are very rural, which is what these places are, then you can probably find something that you could start out to afford and still make money on it. Because everyone always needs a place to live, no matter who they are.
Great point.
I think you got one more to talk about, right?
I do.
Yeah.
On a serious
Real quick.
note, how do you get contractors in such places? Is there a Lowe's, Home Depot, like hardware store? I'm not being sarcastic.
No, I'm with you. So a big part of this, yeah, a big part of this is I don't typically renovate these. I was actually looking at this as an Airbnb route. I wasn't sure. Someone told me that might be a good idea. And I think I didn't realize, I thought it was gonna be like a really quick, easy rehab, but it's gonna need just like a little bit more to be all cute like an Airbnb. I reached out to local brokerages, tried to find a property management company. There are none out there. So brokerages and property management companies. And then out in Jarrett, which my dad mentioned, I found a contractor out there who I've used on a couple smaller jobs I needed and referred to other people because he was actually going to be my buyer on a wholesale deal out there. So, and then just Googling. Yep. But then, of course, when you Google, those are guys with a web presence. Therefore, they're probably more expensive. So it can be a little bit of a learning curve. I'll hop to the last one. I just had a little bit in there about subject to. One thing, I won't spend a ton of time on this. Always offer a cash and terms offer. I've lost a lot of subject to deals because I was just having a subject to conversation. But it's better if it's if the seller can choose. Just to getting a decision made for both parties. And that's about all I'll say on that one. Thank you. So last one, my last slide I was going to talk about real quick. This is a 4-property package deal I got under contract, also through direct mail. But the top 2 properties are both roughly 800 square feet. The seller was asking $50,000 a property. I couldn't get the 2 800 square foot, 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom properties to pencil out, other than they're probably going to be like an even deal each month. And it just wasn't something I felt I was in the position to, with my risk tolerance, to take on. Theoretically, I guess an even deal still makes sense if you're paying down principal and interest, and eventually you'll have a free and clear property. But it's just something I didn't want to necessarily take on, and I also didn't have all the private money that I needed to do all 4 properties. So I reached out to someone I knew is buying in the downtown area, and he knew where I was getting them at, because at first I was asking him questions about them. So you can guess what he paid for those 2, $50,000. But I knew he'd close, and he's helped me with a lot of deals. So I said, you know what, fine. Could I put him on the MLS and make more? Probably, but this keeps the deal simpler and cleaner and just gets it done. And it doesn't complicate things for the other 2 properties. So the other 2 are roughly about 1,300 square feet. The yellow one's a 3-1, the white one's a 4-2. And I knew I could do my same strategy with the tenant buyers at the land contracts, and get a higher monthly payment because of the size of both properties. So I knew I could probably get about a $1,300 to $1,400 payment. Yellow one's paying $1,300. White one on paper is paying $1,450, but I've not seen any money, so that's a whole nother story. So these don't always work out perfectly either. Right. So I was actually attending to that property today, the white one, the white house on the bottom left, that is. So anyways, I wholesaled 2. I bought 2 with private money. The lender I used was only willing to put out a certain amount of money. So my purchase price in the deal, and this is kind of like there's several moving parts. I got the 2 smaller ones down to $45 a piece. But the reason when I wholesaled them to someone for $50, I didn't make any money, is because it's a lot easier to negotiate about a smaller property than a larger property. I actually wanted my interest that I'm paying to be off of $45,000 rather than $50,000. So once he agreed to the 2 smaller ones being $45, the 2 bigger ones being $50 per property, I then sent him all the paperwork. He called me up. He said, I think you made a mistake. The 2 bigger ones are $45. The 2 smaller ones are $50. I said, well, is that an issue? I said, it just makes it a little bit better for me and how I'm structuring things at my end. He said, no, it's fine with me. It's still the same amount. I don't care how you name the numbers. So I bought the 2 bigger ones for $45. The 2 smaller ones, then I got a $0 wholesale fee on, but they allowed me to get the entire package deal done and get my 2 large ones I wanted, because the seller wasn't willing to split them up, and he wasn't willing to do creative financing because he had something he had designs on to put the cash towards. So sort of creative financed in some ways, I guess creative structuring, and then for the financing, private money. For those, I had to put about 10 grand of my own cash in each property, and then I took on a loan of, so with closing costs, $37,500 per property. So it's kind of I put this slide together to show you, like, even when creative financing is not going to work, the seller is not open to terms, there's still a way to do creative real estate, even if it's not creative financing, and find a way to get the deal done. And this took me a few days of just like thinking about it and thinking about different angles to be like, oh, well, I don't have to be who closes on all 4 of them. I can contract all 4, seller's still made whole with all of his money, but I'm happy because I get the 2 I want. So that was kind of like the deal before the deal of structuring all that.
So you had a buyer on the other end for all 4, or what happened there?
Just the 2 smaller ones at $50 a piece. A cash buyer. Yep, those are land contract deals as well. Buy and hold.
Well, that was fun and informative. And don't go anywhere, because we'll probably get into some questions and answers here in a minute. But I want to bring up one more, Philip. He's done a few creative deals also. He's going to talk a project that he bought subject to the existing financing. I think that's the one you're doing, right?
Yeah, it's a mix. I have some slides too. I bought it for $240,000.
Here you go. Let me give you this so that anybody at home can hear you. Just put that up there, and then I'll see if I can't get the slide up for you.
So the owner had a
into some
loan
new
for
stuff.
about 153 on it, and he told me the interest rate is 2.8%. So I asked him to give me 12 months to keep the loan in his name. So that's a sub 2, but only for 12 months. I'm not gonna hold it forever because I want the tenants out of the house, and then I'm gonna flip the property. And then from the 153 that he owns to the bank up to 240, I asked him what he's gonna do with the money. He said, I don't know, because I don't really need it. So I said, how about if I give you 25 now and 50 also in a year? So he holds another note for 50,000 at 0%. I have to pay it up in full in 1 year. So I only paid in 25,000 to take over the property. And it's probably worth Zillow estimate, whatever, says like 370, but once I flip it, it's probably going to be 430. And I'm buying it for 240, but before the 240, I actually put down only about 40,000. He had a loan for the roofing. He changed the roof the year before, so he had a loan for 11,000. That was like a second note on the title, and I paid that off. He told me I could have paid monthly also the same way, kind of a sub 2, but I just paid it off because it had a high interest rate. So if you want to scroll down a little more.
Yeah, let me figure out how to make this work.
Because I think for somebody who's more of a visual person, the numbers are going to make more sense when, yeah. So pretty much that's what I was talking about. Because it has a tenant inside the property right now, it would have not been super easy for him to sell it up front, because somebody that want to come up with cash would want to flip it right away. They would not want to pay cash and just look at the property and collect rent. And for some long-term buy and hold buyer, it would be hard to buy it because it needs some repairs. Not a lot of repairs, but some repairs, and the seller lives in Costa Rica. So he would not want to do any repairs. He doesn't want to deal with, he's not even available on the phone. I have to email him all the time. The way I found him is because I bought the property almost across the street from him, and the lady knew him from like 10 years ago. So just because she emailed him and she said, hey, this guy bought the property from me, if you ever consider selling that. And as soon as she told him, he said, yes, and like give him my email. And I only talked to him through emails the whole time. I told him what I want to do. He told me what he's going to do with the money. We went back and forth just through emails. I asked him how much he wants for it. He said, the agent is going to If I put it on the market, the agent told me I'm gonna get about 280 for it right now. That's what his agent told him. I think on the market it would be 320 right now, but I don't know. But because it has a tenant in the property, it would not sell that easy, and he doesn't want to do any repairs. So anyway, I told him how much you want. He said, hey, if I sell it for 280, I'm gonna end up with maybe 250. I told him, how about if I give you 240? He took it right away. It wasn't really hard to negotiate. The thing is that he's not available on the phone, so he knew it's not so easy to deal with all this stuff. And then if you wanna scroll down.
Hey, Philip,
Yeah,
come on. You say you bought it for 240?
240, yeah.
That was his price.
Yeah,
So you got creative financing on it, or you?
yeah. Scroll down a little more, please. So from the 240, 154 is sub 2 to the bank. So the loan stays in his name.
Okay.
I'm just making the payments for the next 12 months. I bought it in May, so I made 3 payments already. I'm collecting the rent. The rent is 1,700, and the bank, the mortgage payment is 1,220. So
You kept this one.
I'm gonna flip it at the end. So the 154 stays in his name. I didn't have to do anything about it, just the paperwork. The 50,000 is a second position lien to him, to the owner.
Yeah.
I'm gonna pay it off in full in 1 year after I flip it. And then I only paid in 25 in cash at closing, because now the deed is in my name. And I paid off the roof, the loan for the roof. That's 11,000. I could have paid monthly how he was paying it, but it had a high interest rate, so I just paid it off. So the 25 plus the 11 is about 36, and I paid probably 42 altogether because I had a lot of closing costs. Because I had to pay his closing costs. I had to pay all the lawyers to do his second position lien for his note and the sub 2 contract. And I borrow money from somebody here in the room for that. Out of the 42 I put into the deal, I borrowed 38. So it cost me about $7,000 in all closing costs altogether. But pretty much I came up with 5,000 myself. The owner has the 154 to the bank. I'm gonna pay it off once I flip it. The 50 I'll pay it to him once I flip it. And the other 38 I borrowed also I'll pay it off once I flip it. So I came up with 5,000 out of pocket. And the property is in my name. That's the address, 104 Wicker Street. I mean, if you pull it off, it's gonna show probably a 370 on Zillow estimate, but you know how that is. It's never really true. If you wanna scroll down some more. I thought it's gonna slide, but yeah, so I think that was addressed already what is sub 2. The loan stays in his name, but I make the payments and I control the deal. Scroll down some more, please. Things to consider when you transfer it in the sub 2, when you transfer it into your name. I understand the easiest and the best thing to do is to open a family trust. So if his name is in this guy's name, in his case is McGrath, so I would open a family trust myself and call it McGrath Family Trust. And the bank, once you change the name of the owner, is gonna see McGrath Family Trust. They're not gonna know who owns the trust. They're just gonna see it's the same name. That's the way to do it. It's legal, you know, and that way you don't trigger the do on sell clause. But, no, I heard about it, but I didn't use it because that cost about $2,000 to do that, to do a family trust, you know, to open it up. So the other way to do it cheaper than that is to buy it in an LLC, because if it's gonna change the name of the owner, the bank may call the loan due, you know, because they have the right to do that. But if you don't do that, just buy it in an LLC that has a generic name, you know, because if it's gonna change the name from the owner to an LLC, the bank can assume that he owns the LLC, the owner, you know, they're not gonna look into it as long as they get paid every month. But the most important part is to keep the insurance in the original seller's name. So on the insurance, you have to call the insurance company along with the seller or email them together and say, hey, this guy is gonna take care of the property from now on. Send him all the bills. He's gonna be like a property manager. But the owner stays as the first person insured on the insurance. Otherwise, the bank is gonna call the loan due right away. And to protect against that, you can buy sub 2 insurance, which is 1% of the loan to the bank. But you don't really have to buy it as long as you keep the insurance in his name and you open either the family trust or you buy it in an LLC. So, but that's the sub 2 sounds good, like, oh, I buy it sub 2, the loan stays in somebody else's name, but you have to be protected in case the bank is gonna call the loan due, because otherwise you're gonna mess up everybody. The seller is gonna end up having to pay, and they're gonna foreclose on him, not on you as the buyer. They're gonna foreclose on the seller, but because of you promising him, hey, I'm gonna buy the property, I'm gonna pay it up. So you gotta make sure you know what you're doing pretty much. If you wanna scroll down a little more, please. Yeah. So advantages to the buyer, because he didn't have to list it, he didn't have to do any repairs. So that's what I think everybody has to explain them up front. That's the most important part when you're trying to make the sale of why should he sell you as a sub 2. Because he doesn't have to fix it, he doesn't have to pay realtors, he doesn't have to deal with all the stress, especially this guy being in Costa Rica. He would not be able to be on the phone with anybody whatsoever. No contractor, nobody would want to deal with him over emails, And that's what I had to push in front of him, explain him, hey, if you sell it, you're going to get how much you said, the 280, but you got to pay the realtors, you got to pay all the kind of closing costs, you have to show up in person probably to sell it. I did everything online with him. And then obviously the fact that I'm collecting, that's advantage, that's to me as the buyer. My advantage is I don't have to put a big down payment, because like I said, I came up with 5,000 out of pocket. I borrowed 38, I owe the seller 50, and he owes the bank another 154 or so. So I came up with 5,000, but the house is in my name, the deed is in my name. The other advantage is I would not be able to buy it, because if I buy it at 240 and I have to borrow the money from a hard money lender, the current tenant was supposed to stay till the end of July, but it's a great family. They are building a brand new home in North Carolina. They asked me to stay another month or two, and that's okay. But if I had to buy it with a hard money, it would take probably 4 or 5 months for the tenants to move out, and another 3 or 4 or 5 months for me to fix it, flip it, and actually get it sold. So I would have to pay hard money twice almost, not only for 6 months, but 2 times. And from 240, if you, let's say you borrow money at even at 10%. If you do it twice for 2 terms, you're going to end up with another 48,000 in interest. This way, I don't have to pay any interest whatsoever. I only pay interest on the 38,000 I borrowed when I bought the property. And then I make a little bit in the rent right now while the tenant is there, which is not a lot, but I also don't do anything about it. I just collect it and pay off the bank at this point. And then the risks that you have to consider is, especially if something happens either with the buyer or with the seller. Me as the buyer, I have to be protected in case something happens with the seller.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
When you pay it monthly,
Yeah.
how do you pay it? Do you log in with the seller's username and password?
No. I use the third party, like an independent company. The title company can do that too, a servicing company. The seller initially didn't want to do that because on his contract it says that nobody else should make the payment for him and blah, blah, blah. But he ended up saying, hey, since I'm not in the US anymore and I'm not available over the phone, let me just do it through a servicing company. In the first 2 months, I sent him the money and he made the payment, sent me the proof that he made the payment. But then he said, let me just do it through a servicing company, and that's the easiest. And I think the best way is to put that in contract up front, so he's obligated to do that. Because otherwise he may say, hey, just send me the money and I don't want somebody else to. And you want to be protected against that, the risk to the buyer. So that's one of the things. If the seller disappears for whatever the reason, like in my case, because I have no idea what happens with him in Costa Rica, I don't know how I would deal with it at that point. I guess the title company would be able to pay off the mortgage, but they would not be able to pay him, obviously. But obviously that's a risk to take into account, And then the second risk is if there's insurance claims, because he's still on the insurance as the first position, like he's the main insured on the property. But again, because I have an email between me, him, and the insurance company saying that I have the property in my name, but he stays as the first insured, but I take the decision over the property, I feel like I have a second insurance, a builder's risk insurance on the property that's only in my name. But the bank that he has the sub 2 with doesn't see that insurance. So that protects me, but the bank don't see it. But the one that he has with the bank for his mortgage has to stay in his name. So I don't know how that would work if there would be a problem with his claims on his insurance, you know. But I don't know how many claims he can make on it since the property is in my name at this point, you know. Again, if there's problems, especially if you buy a sub 2 and you want to hold it for 30 years in somebody else's name, I think there might be a problem.
So you don't have a landlord policy on it, it's builder risk?
Builder's risk, yeah. Yeah, because that's what I'm going to do once the tenants are moving out, I'm going to. So it's way better from what I know, from a landlord policy, if the property is vacant, the policy is almost like void at that point. As a landlord policy, you're supposed to have a tenant in place. So when you advertise a property, if you have a landlord policy in place, pretty much it doesn't cover you because the property is vacant, and they don't cover a vacant property. So you have to be careful with that. Yeah. So another risk that I think for the buyer is if the bank loan gets transferred to another bank, if they only talk to the seller and the seller would not tell me anything or he would not know about it because, like I say, he lives in Costa Rica, he doesn't get any, unless they send him an email. If they send him like an actual mail somewhere in the US, wherever he has his last address, I would not see it. But up front, when I bought it, all the mails go to my PO box, to my LLC. And that way, if the bank is going to send anything over, I would see it. Because I act as the property manager for his property. Although, again, the property is in my name, but the loan is still in his name. And if you want to scroll down one more time, please. Yeah, so again, what I was saying, advantages to the seller. I think that's the way to sell this, to pretty much explaining why he would want to sell you the property, you know, because you have to give him a reason to do this, because everybody's going to wonder, why would I do this, you know? Why would I keep it in my name? Why this, why that, why that? But if you give him enough reasons to do it, I think people are going to at least consider a second option, you know, especially because most of the time the sub 2s are done when you pretty much buy a property that doesn't have any equity into it, you know. So let's say somebody buys a property for $300,000. After a year, they still owe $295,000, but the property is still worth $300,000. They cannot sell it on the market because by the time they pay realtors and closing and everything, they would be on minus. But they can sell it to you sub 2 and not lose any money, at least. So that's the way you have to show them the reasons to do it and pretty much try to close them on a sub 2. And then the disadvantage is the risk for the seller, but as the buyer, you're not going to explain him that, but you have to consider them. Is also, if you want to scroll down, I think the last one. Yeah, again, as the buyer, I would not tell this to the seller, but these are his risks. In case of insurance claims, he may get involved into something he's not aware of. And if something happens to the buyer, he's in danger because out of a sudden his monthly payments are not going to be done anymore and he would have to foreclose. And a lot of people don't understand that when they sign us up to as the seller, they are still responsible for the payments unless the new buyer is going to make them. Because they think, hey, the buyer is going to make the payments. But if the buyer is not going to make the payments for whatever the reason, they get in trouble. The loan is still in their name. So that's what I think. That's about it. Any questions?
Let's say the buyer, let's say the seller filed for bankruptcy and the buyer doesn't know. Sounds real tricky.
In this year, because I'm only doing this in this particular case only for a year.
No, I'm not speaking specifically to the situation. I'm talking about something too.
If he files for bankruptcy, I have no clue, honestly. I hope the lawyer covered me up because I told you I pay $7,000 in closing costs altogether. I don't know how that would work. I don't know.
You own the deed now.
Yeah, it's in my name.
In one sense, there is some protection because essentially you have an agreement for deed. So that kind of puts a little bit of shield up.
So yeah,
I'm just asking general questions because again, this is that situation where I say you might want an attorney if you're not familiar with this type of deal.
But that's exactly what I did. You can find sub 2 contracts online, as many as you want. You can find free contracts sub 2. But I just used the lawyer. I sent him everything, and I told him to cover me up for anything that he can think of, not just the general stuff.
Again, I say that because it's a lot of that getting into real estate with zero money, little money down, and a lot of folks don't know what they're doing. people call me about my properties all the time. I do subject to deals. And I start speaking and they realize I know about real estate. You're not about to just swindle me. There's a lot of trickery that goes on, and I don't like that kind of business. So I just try to tell people to protect yourself and don't go out here trying to take advantage of people that's in bad situations.
Definitely.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Sure.
Is that slide available, or you can put that on the?
This whole thing's
Yeah.
going on Facebook. You'll have the whole thing, you know.
Yeah.
And if you want, send a note to the Facebook account. I mean, I can send you the slide deck also. And
Okay,
we
so
got
there's a
one more.
question.
I got one more brag that somebody can talk about. But go ahead, real quick.
Just real quick, to speak to the bankruptcy thing, so when bankruptcy court is happening, if that note is being serviced by a service agency like you're doing and being paid, he can put that in his bankruptcy.
So you can or you
He
can't?
cannot, he should not be able to, and the judge will see that that is being serviced and being paid, so that would not really be affected.
And I'm not a lawyer, but in bankruptcy court, if he owes money, they're going after his assets. The sub 2 is a liability.
Yeah.
The asset has already been changed over into his
That's
name.
the deed.
Yeah.
So
Correct.
as long as you haven't done as long as you haven't done a land contract or something where you're contract for deed, I'm not sure how that works, but if you've already switched the deed, it's in his name. That bankruptcy is going to suck him into it for sure, but it'll probably trigger a due on sale, but it's not going to take. I don't think it'll take your house. I'm not a lawyer though.
No, but
did I say that? I'm not a lawyer.
that's the perfect way to say it.
But
Yeah,
I don't think that's going to. I don't
that's
think
what I was thinking from the beginning too, because since the deed is in my name, even if he's gonna declare bankruptcy, I don't see how that would affect me, because again, they would not be able to take a property that's mine.
they'll have to do on sale clause.
They can go after the loan to the bank, but I can, if I have to, I can take her money on that loan and I can pay it off in 7 days, ahead of any bankruptcy, ahead of anything else, if I have to end up in that position, So again,
Bankruptcy in itself is tricky.
it's good to try to cover everything for sure.
Bankruptcy and that subject to is like,
Yeah.
Yeah. It's gonna be, bankruptcy guys are going to be all going crazy. Thanks for that.
All right.
Appreciate it.
Thank
Let me
you.
Let me get this from you. Hey, Scott, come on up. Now we're kind of running into where people start sneaking out on us. But Scott's got a deal he wanted to talk about. I think it's getting, and what I like about it is it shows. He'll tell you about it.
No, just as I was, we're introducing ourselves. I just bought 3 properties with a set of investors. It didn't start off as 3 properties. Actually, my realtor had let me know about 2 properties that were being sold in Newport News. Went down to see the houses. There were maybe 20 other people all jumping on this low price property. So I just talked to the seller's realtor and asked him, "Hey, do you have any other properties for sale?" "Oh yeah, he's got 5 other ones he's looking to. Are they on the market yet?" "No." "Well, let me talk to him." So we started a conversation with the seller's realtor. They had these 5 properties. I found some investors. I'm the before example. I tried to do creative financing. He would have nothing to do with it. So I had to find some other investors that had enough cash. Made a cash offer for all 5 of the properties, going back and forth. Eventually the seller said, "Well, I'll sell you the 3." So we made an offer. Turns out the seller wouldn't let us go into the properties, didn't even have keys for 2 of the properties. So there was no way to see anything on the inside. So we said, "Hey, the best we can do is give you essentially a sight unseen offer." He accepted our first offer. It's close to 50 cents on the dollar, but it was a big deal. So I said I didn't have enough cash of my own. That's why I needed to bring in some other investors. But good news is, I said we were lucky enough. We actually asked the seller if we can get a locksmith out there, get the houses open so we could at least go and look. Turns out the houses were not only in excellent shape, 2 of them were almost ready to be sold immediately. In fact, my realtor said he already had As soon as those deals were listed on the MLS, he already had a handful of offers on the house even before we closed on them. It turns out we were selling them for full price because the houses were already in pristine shape, already had new appliances in one of them. The other two have more work, but it's nothing major. So yes, it's going to turn out to be, I said, about 50 cents on the dollar. But some of the key takeaways are, hey, if you go and see a property, even if you don't get it, just ask the seller if he has other properties, number one. Number two, yes, there are people in here to do deals with. So, look around and get names and network with people. Eventually you'll find somebody that when the time is right, you can do the deal with them. Be persistent. This didn't take 1 month or two. This took about 4 or 5 months to put together. So Nancy was right. These things kind of drag out sometimes, but at the end, the deal is worth it. We did our numbers, and I said we had to make a low ball offer because it was sight unseen, but it worked out well overall.
Had the guy just not decided to go in there himself?
He didn't want to do anything. He didn't want to list it. His realtor didn't really want to list it. He didn't want to do any repairs. In fact, he didn't even sign the paperwork to sell the house. His lawyer signed the paperwork. So he didn't even lift a pen to get the deal done. Yes, sir.
Can I ask you, Scott, how did you guys structure your partnership? Not necessarily I'm under the impression it's all 33 and 33 in terms of ownership and cash put in. It's just my assumption, but was it a multi-member LLC? Was it how did you take title of the property?
So it is a multi-member LLC. The percentages are based on how much cash each member brought into the LLC. There's pluses and minuses about how to split that out, and that still may change, to be honest. But that's basically how we started off. Right. So we had a local lawyer here. I literally emailed him one day, and within a day or two, he had the LLC all set up, all the paperwork signed. All we needed to do was just sign off saying, hey, yes, we are these people.
What did it cost to put it together?
It's about $400 for the LLC.
With the contract of partnership and everything?
With all the paperwork for everything, yeah. Now, I could have done it for maybe $100, but it was easier just to have, this is my first LLC, so it was easier just to have the lawyer take care of all the paperwork. I was gonna say, yeah, there are ways to do it cheaper, and
You can do an LLC for $100.
Yeah.
Just go online, fill it out, and do it. But if you're not comfortable doing it and you're working with 3 people, that it's good to have a lawyer in there. Everybody's comfortable with, especially when the partners are dumping in
right.
$250,000, $300,000 a piece.
And we used the same lawyer for closing, so it was easy. He already had all the paperwork, and it just made our lives that much easier.
All right, so let's open this up for questions real quick for all 3.
I have a question for
Anybody got
Chase.
any? And then,
It's
yep,
a very specific one. On your number 2 deal, did you consider Dodd-Frank requirements? And what that is, for those who don't know about it, is selling under seller financing to a retail buyer, someone who's going to move in and live in it.
Yes.
It's a problem. Now, you can sell to other investors as the day is long. That's good to go. But if you do that, you have to meet the Dodd-Frank requirements.
Which is no more than 5 owner occupants per entity per year, right?
I don't know what now each state modifies that as to what you can do. But the danger is that you could be brought to court for selling to someone who can't afford and wasn't properly screened. So people who do it regularly will use another company to qualify someone for that loan, and you're not involved with that.
It's a great point, and I'm glad you're bringing it up because it's something that's been on my radar before, and things shift and things that on my mind shift, and that's something that was probably on my mind a month ago that I haven't tried thought.
which is why you get lawyers involved in the deals.
I'm in the process of trying to actually restructure everything legally.
Yes, ma'am.
Does anybody have a good real estate attorney on the peninsula?
A lot of us sitting here use a guy named Mike Hamer, who I don't.
That's who we used.
He was coming before COVID. We haven't seen him in a few months. He's been getting busy.
Hamer, Hamar.
Real estate agent for like all my investors. I send them to Coleman & Coleman for like private sale deals and stuff like that. So I love them. They're on the peninsula. We have Bailey. And she is in Coleman & Coleman. Yeah, they're on both sides. So like, and they can do pretty much anywhere in Virginia. So yeah, they can. Yeah, no, I've done loan signings for them. So I use them for both my retail and I send my investors to them too.
Any real estate lawyer will
Yeah.
be able to do most of that for you. You had something? You look like you got a question. Nope. Okay. Hey guys, thanks for coming tonight. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Find a real estate attorney that invests. All
Yes.
of them don't know the ins and outs of investing. Same thing with the real estate agent. They don't all invest. So you want to make sure that you're finding someone that knows specifically what you need.
Thanks for coming. If you guys have anything you want to hear about,
That's what I wonder about.
So you are with Thomas yeah, because I talked to Thomas about it. He comes to the Williams to talk to him about the deal. It's funny. So how was the